This morning I've given myself a challenge, and that is to tell you something about Thanksgiving that you've never heard before. Not easy. I'll start with the traditional account. In September of 1620, a sizable group of adventurers set out to establish a settlement in the colony of Virginia. But as it happened, they were blown off course. So when they finally sighted land, they anticipated it being the Virginia colony. But they were mistaken. It was instead what we know as Massachusetts. The weather was nippy. It usually is there in late December. And by spring, half of the passengers had succumbed to the elements. Yet the other half survived due to the largesse of the Native Americans who came to their aid. By fall of that next year, their crops were doing well, very well, and they reaped a good harvest. Now, none of this that I've just said is probably new information. But now, hear this. That coming fall, a full year after their arrival, it was decided to observe the 1-year anniversary of the settlers having landed in the New World. But the question was, how should the event be commemorated? There were two schools of thought. Some were of the opinion that it should be observed as a day of mourning, a memorial day, as it were, in light of the fact that so many had suffered and died over the course of the past 12 months. But others were of the conviction that a day of thanksgiving was in order. After all, some had survived, and they had had a bountiful harvest. And the debate was heated and lengthy. But we know how it turned out. Did anyone here know about that? I was going to be disappointed if you said, of course. But bottom line, the community had a choice as to whether or not to give vent to groaning or to gratitude. And much of life, I think, affords us the option of how we are going to respond to a situation. Today's text gives a classic illustration of another choice. And that was to be thankful or grateful. Let's look again at the passage. As Jesus was going toward Jerusalem, he entered the village. He saw the group of 10 men, all of whom had leprosy, and they were keeping their distance because the law required that they stay 50 yards away from anyone they saw. And so out of necessity, they had to shout at Jesus. They shouted at him, begging for his mercy. And at that, as I just read, Jesus told them to go to a priest who would have the authority to pronounce them clean. And then, as they leave to do that, Jesus heals them. And you know what happens next? 9 of them keep right on going, but one of them returns to thank Jesus. And Jesus then asks the poignant questions. Were not 10 made clean? But the other 9, where are they? This passage has always been problematic for me in that the text says that all 10 were healed. So why does Jesus tell the 10th leper that it was his faith that made him well? I never got that. In my way of thinking, a cure is a cure, right? So what does that man's faith have to do with the fact that he was cured of his leprosy? Aren't the other 9 every bit as healed as the one who returned to say thank you? Well, actually, there was some light shed on this subject, and it came from the understanding of the words translated from Greek. The word well, as in your faith has made you well. Now, Dick, if I get this wrong, my pronunciation, please wait until after the service is over to tell me about it. In my Columbus Day sermon, he thought that the distance I gave to Japan was a bit off, and so I did hear a voice from the choir say, "That's not right." And I do know whose voice that was. So as I was saying, this is what I could do with the Greek. Our Pew Bible translation reads that the 10 of them were made clean. The Greek word is ekaphara. Yeah, that. In other words, it means they were healed. But because of their faith, the Greek text changes that word of healing or cleansing, and now at the end it says that the 10th leper is sozo. That's a different word entirely. That means made well, which means more than healed. It also means saved. It means made whole. In other words, according to the Greek translation, the 10th leper had been healed and made whole, both physically and spiritually. Why does that matter? We might ask, were all of them thankful to be healed? My guess is that without question, all 10 of them would have been extremely thankful to be rid of leprosy. I can't imagine otherwise. We are almost, all of us, invariably thankful for improved situations, for positive outcomes. When I was in Calcutta, I visited Mother Teresa's leprosarium, where I saw many people with leprosy, or Hansen's disease, as they call it now. And as we walked through the first building of the tour, we saw the effects of it. We saw hands without fingers. We saw feet without toes. We saw noses mashed into people's faces. And as we were about to enter another building, our guide said, very matter-of-factly, "We have now passed out of the infectious unit. So from this point on, it's perfectly safe to make physical contact, to reach out, to shake hands." And we looked at each other and said, "From here on, there's no danger that we will catch leprosy? What were we doing in there?" We were incredulous to think that we had ever been in the line of contagion. And that is when, for the first time, I truly got a full sense of how thankful anyone would be to be rid of leprosy. And so, imagining those 10, I can easily picture all of them so thankful to be able to run to their families as fast as their healed legs would carry them. And yes, I do believe they would all have been thankful. Just as we are thankful when we hear from the doctor that our biopsy report was negative. We're very thankful. We're thankful when a loved one survives a car accident. We're thankful when we are rid of the tyranny of alcoholism. But this morning's question goes deeper than that. It goes deeper than, are you thankful? That's easy to answer. It asks the deeper question, are you grateful? When good things happen to us, do we just feel lucky that things turned out as they did and then move on? Or do we feel blessed? Having received a gift, do we appreciate the fact that in addition to the gift, there is in fact a giver? A divine giver who gave it to us in the first place? And do we care enough about him to return to God and say thank you? When we do that, we become more than thankful for benefits. We become grateful to the ultimate beneficiary. In the words of a Chinese proverb, whenever you drink from a stream, be mindful of the spring. In other words, remember to remember the source. Go back in your mind, in your heart, to the giver. Because whenever we express gratitude, whether it be by taking the time to make a phone call, by sitting down to send an appreciative email, by writing a note, we are making a conscious choice to return to go back to the giver. We are choosing to go against the flow of traffic and to resist the momentum that's continually pushing us forward, and we opt instead to first stop and then to go back. That's not easy in this fast-paced society, but my hunch is that it's never been easy because it goes against the grain. It's human nature to want to plow ahead, go forward, no matter what. Yet the cost of being grateful is that if, like the leper, we do return, we do go back and give thanks, then we discover it's worth the price. Plain and simply, a kind of transformation, a quiet transformation takes place in our souls. And it happens because in saying thank you to God, we are in that moment being saved from ourselves. We're being rescued from meism. We're being released from being ensnared by our soul's house of mirrors. And in that process, we are made more whole. When we say thank you to God, we connect. We spiritually connect. And whenever we do that, we experience an inrush of the greatest gift there is, a sense of the beauty and power of God's goodness. And that's how I differentiate between being thankful and grateful. Someone once said, it's not happiness that makes us grateful. All of us know people who have everything and are not happy. But instead, it's gratitude that makes us happy. So why be grateful? The sum of the message can be told in the form of an old legend. A young man, while roaming the desert, came across a spring of fresh and clear water. It was so sweet that he filled his leather canteen so that he could bring some to a revered tribal elder who had been his teacher. After a 4-day journey, he presented this precious water to the old man, who took a deep drink, smiled, and then lavishly thanked the student for the gift. And that young man then returned to his village with a very happy heart. But later, the teacher allowed another student to drink some of this same water, whereupon he promptly spat it out, complaining that it tasted terribly. Apparently, the leather container had made it taste stale. And that student challenged the teacher. That water is foul tasting. Why did you pretend to like it? The teacher replied, you tasted the water. I tasted the goodness of the giver's heart. On this Thanksgiving Sunday, we come together to worship, to return thanks to God, the giver of all good gifts. Martin Luther was once asked to explain what worship is. He paused, thought a little while longer, and then he said, worship is as Jesus described it. It is the 10th leper turning back. And so it is. Are you thankful or grateful? Therein lies all the difference. Amen.